Welcome to the thrilling crossover event, What If Naruto Entered the Marvel Universe, Part 1. To check other parts of this playlist, click on the playlist link given in the description of this video. Without further ado, let's begin. I couldn't hear anything. His head was spinning. His breath was shallow. His mind was going blank. Naruto, he heard a man's cry in the distance. Naruto? He wondered to himself. Opening his eyes suddenly, he turned his head towards the cry. But all he saw were two blurry lights, one red and one blue. The blue one was the most intense due to its large size, while the red one was small, although it seemed like the red light was gaining ground. Naruto. Don't give up, the voice cried out again but was crushed by a giant fist. Say Hotas, he spoke haltingly. Now that he was regaining his senses, he felt cold, exhausted, and in great pain. Where was Kakashi? Brat, a voice in his head momentarily made him forget his mysterious pain. Kurama? He asked, confused. Don't be alarmed, Brat, but I need you to stay awake, he said seriously, looking at his host on the ground with several wounds. Where's Kakashi? Naruto asked again. He'll be fine, he's still fighting against Uchiha, Kurama said with concern as he secretly healed Naruto. I hope so, Kurama, Naruto called to the nine-tailed fox. Why am I missing an arm? He asked, looking at his missing limb. His brain still couldn't fully remember what had happened. Look up, kid, the Titanic fox commented seriously. Following the kitsune's advice, he looked in terror at the beast in front of him. I suppose you remember everything, he said seriously. Yes, he responded seriously, fear had been completely replaced. This time, I won't fall, he said, clenching his only fist. Hours earlier. Kakashi called a 17-year-old boy. To his right stood a silver-haired man with a mask covering most of his face. He wore a forehead protector with the shinobi symbol on it. Why do I have the feeling that we're alone? He asked seriously. He was in sage mode and couldn't sense anyone else for kilometers. Because you're right, Kakashi replied calmly, his Sharingan eye fixed on the two figures in front of him. Don't forget about me, exclaimed the third member of the team. He had a bowl haircut and a friendly smile. His attire consisted of a green jumpsuit. We haven't forgotten you, guy, Kakashi replied lazily. The Alliance won't be able to come. The nearby villages and towns are being attacked by white Zetsus. Shinobi are protecting the villages and towns, he said seriously. Is everyone protecting their own village? Naruto asked, gathering natural chakra. Kurama had something planned, and they had to be on alert. The Ten Tails was watching them with its large red eye. No, this time it was Guy who answered. Surprisingly, the ninjas were working together to protect the villages, he said with a half smile. That's good, Naruto said. Peace was within reach, but they faced three enormous obstacles. Madara Uchiha had been resurrected by Obito Uchiha's Rinnegan, another traitor. Together, they had awakened the Ten Tails, the first-tailed beast. Tsunade-sama asked us to protect you. Our mission is to hold out, Kakashi said, slowly drawing a kunai. Obito tensed up a bit. Both of them were staring each other down. That's impossible, Naruto said with a hint of humor. Grandma has too much faith in the three of us, he said with amusement, though nervousness could be heard in his voice. Kurama had told him that they were much weaker than the Ten Tails and couldn't defeat it with just the three of them, not to mention two Uchihas. Their situation was a complete mess. Josh! Guy exclaimed with a big smile, he was still as youthful as ever. Naruto-kun, we'll just have to do this like old times, he said with a huge grin. You're quite noisy, Guy, Kakashi said with tired eyes, but a small smile was visible behind his mask. See, Jodas is right, Kakashi, Naruto said. He wasn't just Jiraiya's successor, one of the legendary Sannin, someone who became a perfect sage at a young age. He was also the strongest soldier Danzo ever took in. The old war hawk had put a lot on him. Trained since he could walk, he had many teachers who taught him everything he knew, but unfortunately, he didn't have a strong bond with the village. He didn't have that willingness to die for the village, but for the people within it. He would fight for his precious people, not for a village that gave him nothing in return. Kakashi had been his lifelong mentor, and Guy had taught him many valuable lessons. However, it was Jiraiya who had the greatest impact on him. He had never connected with anyone so well before. But life can give and take, and it's never fair. Sometimes life can be good, and other times it can be bad. But it depends on each person how they face it and move forward. As a sage, he had learned that once he reached enlightenment. Kakashi. Go after the ugly one, Guy, take care of the old one, Naruto told them, his relaxed expression changing to a more serious one. He couldn't play around anymore. I suppose you'll go after the big one, Kakashi said seriously, his left eye transforming into the Mangekyo Sharingan. I'm the only one who can stand up to him right now, he replied with a bitter smile. His eyes turned a yellowish hue, and his pupils stretched horizontally, resembling the eyes of the toads. My flames are burning hotter than the sun itself. Guy exclaimed loudly, his fist connecting with his palm as his chakra soared into the sky. He opened 5 of the 8 gates. Naruto! Kakashi called, stopping Naruto before he charged forward. When all of this is over, I want us to go for drinks and read some good literature, he said with a smile in his eye. Of course. Naruto replied with a big smile, closing his eyes so Kakashi wouldn't see his pain. Absolutely. We'll read while we train. It sounds like an excellent idea. Guy said with excitement. Guy, I think you're mistaken, I didn't invite you. He left, Kakashi said with a sigh, and he began to run in the opposite direction. Obito quickly pursued him. Guy reached the head of the 10 tails. With his speed, he reached Madara and attempted a kick, which was blocked by the Uchiha. Both of them moved away from the 10 tails, which had broken free from Madara's control and could move freely. Ready, Kurama? Naruto asked, his eyes locked onto the 10 tails, which somehow had a macabre smile. Of course, brat. Kurama replied with a big smile. Naruto entered Kurama mode, and chakra started emanating from his body, gradually forming the silhouette of a golden 9-tailed fox. Kurama quickly advanced towards the 10 tails. Are you sure this will work, Kurama? Naruto asked. Not entirely, but it's the only thing we can do to win, Kurama replied seriously. A few kilometers away, another Kurama was in a lotus position. We just have to hold on until the clone gathers enough natural energy for a counterattack, he said calmly. Kurama. That's the hard part, holding on, Naruto said, dodging one of the 10 tails attacks. The beast's arm slammed into the ground, causing the terrain to shift, with some parts rising and others sinking. However, Kurama climbed onto the 10 tails arm and began to run on it. A large dark sphere began to form in its mouth, and Kurama had to zigzag to avoid the 10 tails tendrils that attempted to impale him. Kurama, let's aim for the eye, Naruto told the fox. But his path was blocked by more tendrils. Leaving a clone to control Kurama's avatar, he jumped onto the 10 tails hand, which grabbed him and threw him directly at the eye. The clone disappeared, and the chakra avatar of Kurama dissipated. Naruto, still in the air, summoned the chakra avatar once again, reforming the Baiju Dama. As he launched it towards the 10 tails eye, the beast used its index finger to redirect it back at Naruto. Dissolving the Kurama avatar, Naruto took something from his ninja pouch and threw it forward. It exploded into white smoke, obscuring the beast's vision. Kurama, I don't think this will work, Naruto warned uncertainly. Just a few more seconds, Kurama replied irritably. Suddenly, the entire terrain began to tremble, and nearby rocks shattered due to the pressure. Emerging from the hole where he had taken cover, Naruto looked in horror at the 10 tails, which was preparing a Baiju Dama, larger than any he had seen in the past few hours. Kurama, he called, but his partner didn't respond. Kurama! He shouted in panic. The Baiju Dama was launched in his direction. Closing his eyes, he prepared for his imminent death. His body was enveloped in the fox's chakra, which struggled to stop the Baiju Dama. Creating his own Baiju Dama, he aimed it at the incoming one but hesitated for a few seconds. That hesitation proved costly as the Baiju Dama exploded. Where am I? Naruto wondered. He was lying in an empty space that somewhat resembled his mental space, but it didn't look like a sewer. Getting up slowly, he looked around. Strange, he murmured. He was alone, and there was no sign of life or anything else. Kurama. He called out to his friend, but there was no response. I see you're getting along with my sons, a mysterious voice said. Turning around, he saw the person who had spoken. Who are you? Naruto asked calmly. My apologies, it's been a while since I've spoken to anyone. I am Hagoromo, or as you shinobi know me, the Rikadu Sennin, the sage of the 6 paths, he replied with a relaxed smile. Naruto was surprised to see the supposed god of shinobi but quickly relaxed. He didn't seem as intimidating as the 10 tails. What brings me the honor of this meeting? Naruto asked. The sage raised an eyebrow but let the young man's sarcasm slide. You're dying, he said calmly. He noticed that Naruto didn't seem surprised or scared about the prospect of death. It's normal, after all, I was facing something greater than a cage, Naruto replied without much interest. Is there a heaven? He asked, looking at the sage. If there is, there must be a hell, he muttered to himself. You're dying, you're not dead yet, the sage interrupted. They didn't have much time, and discussing life and death at this point would be a waste of time. And? Naruto gestured for the sage to continue. I had 2 sons, the elder Indra and the younger Asura. Both were destined for an eternal conflict through reincarnations. Because Indra's reincarnation is not on the front lines and his soul is protected, it is separated from him. Asura, who would be you? He couldn't continue as Naruto raised his hand to stop him. I am not the reincarnation of anyone. I am Uzumaki Naruto, not Asura or anyone else. All my actions, decisions, and experiences are because I lived my life the way I wanted to. I won't fulfill the goal of a dead person just because he claims I'm his reincarnation. If you're planning to pit the emo and me against each other in a death match, count me out, Naruto said seriously. I see, the elder replied. But that's not what I was going to tell you. My elder son, upon seeing the cowardice of his reincarnation and the resurrection of the 10 tails, is willing to work together with you, he explained with a small smile. Behind Naruto stood both brothers, neither looked at each other, but both had a hand on Naruto's shoulder. You will have great power, and it's up to you how you want to use it, for good or evil. The fate of your world is in your hands. He pointed to Naruto's palm, where there was a sun with a half-moon blocking it, resembling an eclipse. Dios. That word and I don't go together, he said with a slight smile. I prefer to be called Shinobi, the last soldier, he continued, clenching his fist tightly. Danzo taught him a lot, he was his mentor and master. Although Danzo's teaching methods were not healthy or normal by ninja standards, they were effective. The sacrifice of one person to save thousands. Who better to be a sacrifice than another sacrifice? I will fight and defeat the Jubi once and for all, he said seriously. Peace is just one push away, and I won't fall until I make that final push. I hope so, young Uzumaki, Naruto Uzumaki, the boy of prophecy, he murmured with a small smile. Although his children didn't get along, they were working together. That's enough for him to die in peace. By the way, old man. Where is Kurama? He asked, confused. Where else would he be, brat? A resounding voice asked. The darkness they were in was illuminated. It was no longer an old sewer or yellowish water. It was now a healthy white space with crystal clear water. The powerful 9-tailed fox sat a few meters away, smiling. Hey, Kurama. The teenager called with a big smile, but his smile disappeared when he pointed accusingly at the kitsune. Where the hell were you? He shouted with an accusing finger. The fox's smile disappeared, and with a dangerous growl, he approached the boy. Who do you think you're pointing at, you stupid monkey? The Baijuu growled. Hagoromo had an amused smile. He never imagined the proud fox would act so childish. It's time for me to go. I'm glad to see you again, Kurama, and Naruto. I hope you find the long-awaited peace, he said with a smile. Both Kurama and Naruto stopped their fight upon hearing the sage's words. Kurama smiled sadly, although it passed when Naruto placed a comforting hand on his paw, pushing him away and starting to laugh quietly. Kurama, let's go all out, he murmured, looking at the eye of the Jubi. Free from copy. It's about time. He exclaimed with a wild smile. Naruto's chakra exploded, catching Madara's attention as he stood on the brink of death, a body not far from him, burned and cracked. Naruto. He called out to the Baijuu, realizing the state of the Uchiha. I know. Don't hold back. He shouted, charging forward. Kurama's clone disappeared, and Kurama's avatar grew, thanks to the gathered energy, half the size of the Jubi itself. We don't have much time, he growled between clenched teeth. His new power was burning him. He had just awakened, and the phantom pain in his left arm was bothering him. He had a plan that required too much chakra, maybe all of Kurama's and his own. But if he succeeded? The Jubi roared mightily, destroying the ground for miles with a simple roar. Naruto, you are now the bearer of the power of the Sage of the Six Paths, the fox spoke seriously. You have the power to change everything, the kitsune assured. Naruto smiled with excitement. It wasn't the time yet, but he couldn't help but feel the thrill of an imminent battle against a powerful being like the Jubi. Then let's fight with the power of Kami. He roared with a big smile, his right eye glowing faintly. One of the Jubi's large arms moved towards him. Just as it was about to reach him, Kurama disappeared, leaving behind a small stone that was destroyed by the Jubi's attack. Appearing in front of the Jubi, Naruto formed a Baiju Dama in one hand and two Rasen Shuriken in the other, which he threw at the Jubi's face. The Jubi didn't take long to counterattack, opening its massive jaws to retaliate. "Now, Kurama!" the blonde roared. A clone of the fox appeared in front of the Jubi's jaws, entered them, and launched a concentrated Baiju Dama. A few seconds later, it exploded, damaging the Jubi. Descending, Naruto dispelled his transformation. He had to conserve as much chakra as possible. The next move would leave him almost completely drained. A dark sphere appeared and turned into a staff that he quickly grabbed to block the incoming attack. "Don't you dare ruin my plan, Uzumaki!" The older Uchiha roared, missing his right arm and part of his body due to his battle with Guy. If it weren't for his Rinnegan, he would be dead. "You've been doomed since we set foot on the battlefield," the Uzumaki growled in response. With no time to lose, he saw the beast fix its massive eye on him and accelerated his plan. A root took Madara by surprise, and Naruto used the opportunity to deliver a palm strike to the Uchiha's chest. Then, he leapt backward and formed a hand seal. As he did, branches began emerging from Madara's body, staining the ground with blood. Still, Naruto didn't stop. He stretched his hand toward Madara and, with narrowed eyes, whispered the name of the technique that would help him end the war. Chibaku Tensei. Roots started emerging from beneath the earth, rapidly attracting more rocks. In the center of the growing sphere lay the body of the strongest Uchiha. His gaze shifted to the Jubi, which was preparing another Baiju Dama. But a massive tree sprouted from the sky, diverting the Baiju Dama. Roots began to emerge from the tree, attempting to ensnare the beast, but it broke them with its movements. As the ground under it cracked, a second later, Kurama's chakra form returned, biting down on the beast's neck and restraining it long enough to be sealed. "Kurama, don't let go!" Naruto shouted, looking up at the large rock sphere floating in the sky. "What do you think I'm doing?" The fox mentally growled. "I won't last much longer, so hurry up." He increased the pressure on his grip, but one of the Jubi's hands landed on his head and started to squeeze it. With a burst, the Jubi's hand was damaged. A clone of the blonde had thrown a lava-infused Rasen Shuriken at it. "I need it to go higher," Naruto thought with a bead of sweat. He was spending too much chakra in a short time. An idea crossed his mind. Making hand signs, he ran toward the 10 tails. Senpo Makuten, Shin Suzenju. Hands grabbed one of the beast's tails. More and more hands appeared, taking each of its limbs. One was destroyed, but 5 more replaced it. Slowly, the hands began lifting the beast, which struggled to escape. Several of these hands held its mouth, preventing it from launching any Baiju Dama. "Naruto," called the fox within the mental space, "are you sure about this?" It asked with seriousness. It gazed at its host with sadness, its back turned and its eyes fixed on the ground. Its only arm hung loosely by its side. "If I don't do it, who else will?" Naruto asked with a half-smile. He turned to look at his companion. His eye was filled with red veins, and along with the blood dripping from it, he could see that his partner was going blind. "The old sage gave me this power to bring peace. In the end, I'm not very grateful since I broke the gift within hours," he said, amused, referring to the power of the Rinnegan. "Hey, you may have a point, Kit, but..." He couldn't finish what he was saying. He didn't have the right words to comfort his companion. "As I said, Kurama, who else would?" Naruto smiled kindly. "I may die in this final technique, but it will be worth it. I will fulfill the pervy sage's dream," he said calmly. He was above the Chibaku Tensei, looking down at the Jubi, which was roaring intensely. His sclera began to fill with blood. He stared intensely at the ground. A small purple point was there, growing rapidly. His plan was to open a portal and enclose himself with the Jubi. Their existence and that of the Baijuas would disturb the peace in the distant future. If he wanted peace to last forever, he had to sacrifice himself. The Chibaku Tensei began to descend rapidly, positioned right above the Jubi, which was making every effort to break free from the Buddha's grasp. In the distance, he saw the army of shinobi running towards his position. They had probably already defeated all the white Zetsus. He looked at the starry sky with a smile. "I kept my promise. Sensei," he said with a big smile, but then he heard a voice to his right. "Do you think that by doing this, you'll be as cool as me?" said a tall man with long white hair, wearing a metal headband with the kanji for oil written on it. "You still need 100 more years to be as cool as me, kid," the man exclaimed with apparent arrogance, but he started laughing shortly after. Naruto, confused, gave a small smile, which turned into a full-blown laugh. "You're right, Uro Senin. Kurama was closing its eyes with a small smile, allowing itself to spend its last chakra on a small genjutsu. It was the only thing it could do for the kid in these moments. Naruto! Shouted Tsunade Senju, the fifth Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. She watched as the blonde's body fell onto the purple portal that forcibly sucked in the Jubi. When the massive meteor crushed his body, she couldn't do anything but make futile attempts to escape. In the end, she could only watch as she lost another precious person. Once again, she couldn't save someone special. A convoy was heading towards the nearest airport, tasked with protecting a single individual who was inside one of the heavily armed vehicles. The person in question was 21 years old, with brown hair and deep brown eyes. She was dressed in a dark blazer with a light blue button-down shirt and a matching dark skirt. A pair of heels lay beside her, and the top button of her shirt was undone, though she remained composed despite the tense atmosphere. She removed her sunglasses and glanced at the soldier to her left. She held a glass of whiskey with ice in her left hand. The soldier she had just looked at quickly averted his gaze. "I feel like I'm being taken to a court-martial. It's madness. What have I done to you?" she asked, addressing the 4 soldiers assigned to protect her. "Are you planning to stand me up? Do you have no tongues?" she inquired, growing somewhat irritated. "Hey, Forrest!" she called out to the soldier on her left. "Yes, I do have a tongue, miss," the soldier promptly replied. "Oh, I see. You don't like me," she said nonchalantly. She wouldn't be the first or the last. "You intimidate them," someone in the front with a feminine voice said, turning out to be the driver of the vehicle. "Oh my goodness, you're a woman!" she exclaimed, genuinely surprised. "I hadn't realized, my apologies, but that's not the point. From where I sit, I thought you were a man." "I'm a pilot," the woman declared, unconcerned about their doubt. "I must say, aside from all those vests, you have a great figure. I'd definitely be behind you if I were a man," she said without any hesitation. This elicited some laughter from the others. "Relax, everyone, have a good laugh." "Miss, I have a question," the co-pilot said, positioning himself to look at his charge. "Go ahead," she replied calmly, taking a sip of her drink. "Do you ever think about starting a family?" the man asked without hesitation. "What? Are you proposing to me?" To answer, "I don't think so," she said uncertainly. For now, her life was about living as if it were the last day. She had never considered the idea of starting a family. However, she pushed that thought to her subconscious. The soldier on her left raised his hand nervously. "Anything else? The raised hand is a joke, right?" she asked, causing the soldier to lower his hand. "May I take a photo with you?" he asked. "Go ahead," she exclaimed, raising her glass. She leaned in a bit towards the soldier to be in the shot while he wore a goofy smile, making the peace sign with his right hand. "But don't post it on your website, and no signs," she quickly added, causing the soldier to lower his hand. "I was kidding, make the peace sign. I love peace, I'd be out of a job if there were peace." "Hurry up, press the button," the soldier said to his companion, who held the camera. Just as he was about to shoot, the car in front of them suddenly exploded, causing him to drop the camera. "What's happening?" the woman asked, alarmed. "What's going on?" "Jimmy, stay with Stark," the co-pilot shouted. The pilot got out of the car but was shot as soon as she did. The co-pilot got out and started firing blindly. "Duck," said the soldier called Jimmy. The co-pilot who had gone out leaned on the car's hood to take cover, but a bullet went through his head from his blind spot. Stark jumped as she saw the glass covered in the soldier's entrails. "You damned bastards," Jimmy said angrily, grabbing his M16 rifle and getting out of the car with determination to take down all the attackers. "Hey! What are you doing? Wait!" Stark spoke in panic when the last soldier got out. "Stay here and don't come out," Jimmy shouted through the glass. But when he turned, he was shot by pellets that pierced the car, making holes on the left side. Stark, dazed and frightened, got out of the car to try to escape. She ran towards a rock and took cover behind it. Taking out her phone, she tried to call her best friend for help. But something fell to her right. It was a missile, but not just any missile. It was one she had created, as it had Stark Industries engraved on the side. She tried to move away, but she couldn't do anything as it exploded, sending shrapnel into her body. Opening her blouse, she saw that her vest had been pierced, and her blood was flowing. She lost consciousness seconds later. The attackers were surprised to see who was on the ground. Calling their leader, he had an idea. "Hugi hu lir kof ha," the leader spoke. They quickly took the injured woman away. Subtitle: Take her. One of their soldiers spoke to him, distracting him from the injured woman. Ra buhu mu bal hawa mau noodle. Subtitle: Sir, we found something else. The bald man approached one of the newcomers. They had the body of a man, seriously injured, with sickly pale skin. His golden hair was caked with dried blood, and half of his face was covered in blood and sand. He was missing an arm, and his clothes were in tatters. Wali dal matahu yumim alif maksurat rao ya. Subtitle: Why did you bring me a dead man? The man scolded his subordinate, drew a weapon, and aimed it at the badly wounded blonde. He was about to pull the trigger when another man quickly stopped him, pulling something from his pocket and showing a tag with strange markings. Seeing everyone's confusion, he moved away and dropped the tag, then ran off, and a large explosion occurred where the tag had fallen. Ha yu hujib kof ya lis wanan ya duraludilin. Subtitle: I had dozens of those in a pocket. The apparent leader looked at the blonde with interest, quickly making a decision. He turned around. Haguhu muhu ra da mim shayin hugihu sin arik tuhu buha. Subtitle: Don't let him die, take him to Stark. The men quickly picked up the injured blonde and placed him in a van. Unbeknownst to them, they had just captured a man with the power of a divine being. Two individuals were locked in a deadly battle, one with silver hair defying gravity, and the other with dark hair. These combatants were Kakashi Hatake, known as the Copy Ninja, and Obito Uchiha, another Uchiha who had betrayed the village. Kakashi gripped a kunai in his right hand, infused with Raten chakra, while Obito held a dark staff. Both rushed towards each other at high speed. Obito extended his hand, piercing Kakashi's left side, where Kakashi did the same. Kakashi, spitting blood, fell to the ground, followed by a panting Obito. I suppose you have achieved your revenge. Obito spoke an exhausted Kakashi, life slipping away rapidly from him. I guess you're right, Obito replied. The wound wouldn't kill him, but he didn't exactly want to live. He was getting his revenge, but why did it feel so hollow? I just want you to know. I didn't kill Rin on purpose. She got in the way when I intended to kill the Kiranin. He breathed his last, his final vision being the silhouette of a young Naruto, which brought a smile to his face. Obito remained motionless, making no movements, and stayed still. Arg, Naruto exhaled loudly. His blue orb surveyed the area. He clutched his head in pain, his teeth grinding together as he squeezed his only visible eye, trying to endure the pain. He heard trembling footsteps approaching him. Looking up, he saw a brunette woman wearing a coat with bandages covering her chest. She extended a cup of water to him. After staring at the cup for a few moments, Naruto couldn't resist any longer and quickly drained it. Arigato, he murmured. The blonde woman then sat on what seemed to be a bed. He noticed something protruding from her chest, some cables leading to something metallic. It was a small metal box. Koko wa doko? Naruto asked from where he was. For some reason, he couldn't open his right eye. Sorry, but I don't speak Taka, the woman replied in a raspy voice, clearly not happy with her current situation since she had woken up. Naruto wore a puzzled expression. He didn't understand a single word the woman had said. Kiss her, kid, the newly awakened Baiju spoke. It was leaning on its front paws and looking forward. What? Are you kidding me, Kurama? Naruto thought, embarrassed. I said what I said. When you kiss her, I'll use a genjutsu to recover her memories and transmit them to you so you can communicate with the girl, the fox assured, sporting a small grin. Naruto knew that Kurama was messing with him and taking this opportunity to tease him. Hey! You still there? The woman called out, but she was taken aback when Naruto suddenly approached and kissed her. Opening her eyes in surprise, the woman clenched her fist and slammed it into Naruto's face. He was initially shocked, but slowly, he regained his senses and blushed with embarrassment. 1. It was his first kiss. 2. Kurama had tricked him. Gomenasai. He cried out, blushing, and fell off the bed, groaning in pain. He entered his mental space and searched for the fox with annoyance. But his annoyance faded when he saw Kurama's condition. Kurama, Naruto muttered sadly. Don't start crying, Naruto. Be grateful that we're alive. And before you start complaining, I did you a favor. But if you need to understand what I think are insults she's throwing at you, use your Rinnegan, the human path will help with that, the fox explained. I see. But the idea of continuing to live. Naruto trailed off, his gaze downcast. The pervert would tease you if he saw your state. Dirty, weak, and now imprisoned. Not to mention, your luck with women is gone. Who would have thought? Kurama chuckled. He'd tease me anyway, Naruto smiled wryly. What do you think they would think? You know, Kakashi and Guy, he asked suddenly, the pleasant atmosphere giving way to a serious question. I think they would want you to live, whether it's in Konoha or another dimension, Kurama replied. Dimension? Naruto asked in surprise. Kid. You literally transported us to another place. But you've sealed the Ten Tails in a different dimension. I doubt it can escape, Kurama commented. He appreciated Danzo for training Naruto in such a complete manner, although he didn't do very well in the art of seduction, and Jiraiya preferred to teach himself rather than the younger Uzumaki. It's time to get out. It seems the woman will rip your balls off if you keep ignoring her, Kurama said, amused. Naruto looked at him for a moment before nodding. Are you an idiot? Why the hell did you kiss me? Hey, idiot, answer. The woman shouted angrily. Opening his right eye in pain, he looked directly at her. Stark saw his bloodied blue eye open, the sclera was filled with blood, darker than the left. Then she felt something leave her body, and during that time, she felt weakened. Naruto, on the other hand, saw the entire life of the woman in seconds. He was intrigued by all the weapons she had built and how powerful they were. But he also copied her language to be able to communicate with her, returned her soul to her body, and processed the information. What the hell just happened? The stunned woman asked. I'm sorry, but it was the only way to communicate in your language, Naruto spoke with a foreign accent. What did you do to me? The woman asked suspiciously. She had already had enough with the piece of metal in her chest. I only copied some of your memories and transferred them to mine. My language is different from yours, and I don't think we'd understand each other for a long time, Naruto explained, visibly fatigued. His right eye started bleeding again. Then you're another one of those heroes? She emphasized the word heroes with air quotes. From what I gathered. Something like that, but I'm not associated with anyone, he said calmly, trying not to die from the massive chakra depletion. I'm sorry to interrupt your discussion, but don't raise your voices, or we'll be in trouble, a man in a suit and glasses spoke. But it was too late when the door was hit, creating a hole. Ra waradu hushi, a man spoke through the door. Come on, get up, the suit-clad man urged, helping Naruto to his feet, and the woman hesitantly followed. Do as I do, he whispered, somewhat nervously, raising both arms and placing them behind his head. Naruto noticed that it was a surrendering posture, something he had seen many times with police officers, and something the woman seemed to be familiar with when she drove these high-speed vehicles. When the doors opened, a heavily armed group entered, led by an arrogantly faced man. These weapons belong to my company, the woman said suspiciously. Keep quiet. The man whispered anxiously. He then spoke in a language that neither Stark nor Naruto understood, but he seemed to be addressing the woman, so Naruto made no defensive moves. When he finished speaking, he gestured to the man with glasses, who approached Stark to explain that the message was directed at her. He said, Welcome, Denny Stark, the most famous mass murderer in the history of the USA, the translator said when he was done, and Danny looked defiantly at the men. I refuse, she replied without hesitation. The man turned to Naruto with a stern look and began speaking in a more hostile tone. My men. Found something peculiar that you had with you. Some pieces of paper that explode. I want you to tell me how you made them, he said seriously. You guys are incapable of creating something like that, and even if you could, I wouldn't tell you, Naruto replied with determination. He wouldn't break, Danzo had put him through tests that only someone like him could endure. When the man with glasses finished translating the Uzumaki, he was struck, and they removed the black shirt that remained on him. Holding his one arm and shoulder to prevent him from moving, they exposed the blonde's back to the bearded man. Taking an iron cable, he spoke again. He says, last chance, once I begin, I won't stop even if you beg for it, kid. Please. Accept his deal, he translated and added a final part. I refuse to give those tools to people like these, spoke the Uzumaki. Not even 10 minutes had passed since he regained consciousness, and he was already beginning to hate this place. Splash. Naruto suppressed a cry of surprise when the improvised whip struck his bare skin. A large wound began to form on the Uzumaki's back, crimson red oozing from the gaping wound. Splash splash. The skin began to peel off the Uzumaki, along with the blood that splattered the floor around him. What made it even worse was that the blows were connecting with the first bleeding wound, making it even uglier than it was. Splash. 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 The man wiped the sweat from his forehead, and when he removed his hand, he saw some blood on it. He wiped the blond boy's blood on his coat, as he was hanging there, only held by his men who were restraining his arm and shoulder. The one holding his shoulder was trembling, covered in the most blood. Making a gesture to his men, they released him, letting him fall to the ground with a dull thud. Stark remained silent as she looked at the Uzumaki's motionless body. The bearded man approached and nudged him with his foot, but there was no response. Waru, the man with glasses hurried to the blonde and touched his neck. A few seconds passed where he felt nothing, and he started getting nervous. But then he felt it, a faint heartbeat. I need to sew up his wounds, alcohol, and water, he requested what was needed, and the bearded man nodded, sending one of his men to fetch it. Hours later. Arg, the Uzumaki grunted between clenched teeth. Losing an arm was painful, but this was a total mess. Are you all right? The man with glasses asked, wiping his bloody hands. I could be better, the boy murmured. He didn't move much because he knew what had been done to his back. I'm not the world's best doctor, but I did what I could to sew it up and prevent infection, he said quickly. Thanks, but I'll be better with time. It's not the first time I've been seriously hurt, he informed, still lying on the bed with his back exposed. I have a question, the man said. I'm all ears. From your build and features, I can tell you're not older than 20, he said seriously. How old are you? The man asked. I recently turned 18, the blonde answered honestly. Danzo taught him that if someone gives you something or does something for you, you have to return the favor or reward them. He would give the man information in exchange. I see. I'm Ho Yinsen, the man said, extending his left hand. Uzumaki Naruto, the blonde replied, extending his left hand to shake the man's. Are you a foreigner? He asked with interest. You could say that, he smiled a bit, though it turned into a grimace. Don't strain yourself, they did a number on you, Yinsen warned. Don't worry, this won't kill me, he assured with a small smile. He shifted to sit up in bed. His back was mostly stitched up, with only dried blood hiding the black threads. What happened to her? He asked, pointing at Stark, who was lost in thought. Some things happened when you were unconscious, he said, but he perked up when Stark stood up with a determined look. Tomorrow morning, I want you both to help me, and you better cooperate, blonde, she said, her determination to survive evident. Yes, ma'am? Naruto said. He really didn't want to get whipped again. We only have a week to get out of this place. I need you to buy time with those papers while I do the rest, she said, going to some sheets and starting to take notes. Naruto looked at Yinsen, and he just shrugged. The next day. They can't do it because my masters trained me for years in a hidden village far from here. I spent my whole life practicing until I mastered it, the Uzumaki said to the bald man in front of him, and Yinsen translated what he said. I can do all you want, but I need my blood to do it. I'm not fully recovered yet, and I need time to recover. But this is a sample of what I can do. Yinsen approached the man and handed him some small papers with red symbols. He took them in his hands and stepped back. They were outside the cave. They tested the explosives, and the Uzumaki gave them what they wanted. Leaving one on the ground, he stepped away. Naruto made a hand sign, and the paper exploded, knocking the man down, who then got up with a smile. I modified them to explode 5 seconds after being placed, he lied shamelessly, but they didn't know. The bomb tag was linked to his chakra. Every time it was dropped, he would feel a vibration and be notified each time they were used. He wants 1,000 of these for a week, Yinsen said, translating for the man. What part didn't you understand that I need my blood? He muttered with his eyes rolling. The part where you need the blood, Yinsen replied. Returning to the cave with his eyes covered, they heard a commotion. When they looked again, they saw dozens of men bringing weapons and tools to a thoughtful Denny. She was jotting something down, and when she looked at Yinsen, she approached him to hand him the paper. When he looked at it, he went to the bearded man and began telling him the necessary materials. Naruto was writing kanji with his blood, but he glanced at what the woman was doing, surprised by what she was accomplishing. Kid, come here, she called, and Naruto set aside the papers he was working on and looked at the plans with Yinsen. What is this? He asked. Stretch the blueprint and see, she said, and Yinsen took the plans and stretched them out. He opened his eyes wide when he saw what it was. This is impressive, Yinsen said. Naruto remembered Mecha Naruto and shivered. He didn't like that machine at all, and the destruction it caused on the borders of Iwa was not fun at all. 4. One day later. You know, It's uncomfortable when a teenager stares at your chest, Denny said casually. Naruto was helping her install her arc reactor. From what I've seen, it wasn't the most embarrassing thing you've done, Uzumaki replied. He was using his one hand to connect it, following Stark's instructions carefully, and everything was going smoothly so far. See? She asked, raising an eyebrow. I looked into your memories and copied the language, he replied casually. Are you one of those superheroes? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Superheroes? He asked, confused. You know, like the ones in Manhattan, the Fantastic Four, or something like that, she said indifferently. No, I come from another dimension, he said, concentrating as he had to insert the small reactor into the woman's chest. Dimension, she repeated, surprised, though she gasped when the reactor entered her. That's it, he said with relief, handing her an orange and black jacket. It was the last gift Jiraiya gave him, and he hadn't worn it until now, wanting to preserve it as much as he could. What a color. So eye-catching, he said uncertainly. It was too much orange for his taste, but it was comfortable and served the purpose of covering up. It's the best color there is, she smiled at what he said. Red and yellow, Kushina and Minato, the combination of his deceased parents, and he would wear that color with pride. Weird tastes, he said with a small smile. He covered what was necessary, leaving the reactor visible. The person who parks cars in swimming pools said it, he said expressionless. Remind me to hit you later for looking into my memories without my permission, she grumbled in embarrassment. Whatever you say, he replied casually. He stepped back to admire his work. He now had 50 bomb tags. His chakra was almost non-existent at the moment. Even a low-level Genin would have more chakra than him. Over the next few days, the three of them got to know each other. Naruto talked about Shinobi, and it was no longer necessary to hide the information about his village since, for everyone else, he died alongside Kakashi and Guy. At first, Yinsen didn't believe him, but after explaining about the kanji and demonstrating their use, he was convinced. Are you some kind of super soldier? Yinsen asked. You could say that, but I prefer to call us warriors, he confessed. My master, Danzo, taught me almost everything I know. How to act, how to suppress my feelings so it wouldn't affect my mission, and about loyalty. But he couldn't teach me the last one well, he spoke with melancholy. Why do you say that? Stark asked. Instead of wanting to give my life for a village that hated me, I preferred to give my life for my precious people. My older brother, Kakashi, he taught me and protected me from becoming another puppet of Danzo, he recounted sadly. He still remembered the extreme training the old hawk put him through. Your world is messed up, Denny commented without hesitation. I mean, training children to go out and kill. Yinsen, sensing the tense atmosphere, decided to ask something else. How did you end up here? He asked anxiously. You couldn't always meet a ninja. I was fighting a monster, he spoke seriously. A very powerful one. Due to a god from my world granting me great power, I was able to hold it back. But when I did, I was transported by my space-time technique, he said with a serious face. Do you mean? Yinsen started nervously. Did it land in this dimension? Denny asked seriously. No, that simple word relaxed them. I landed somewhere else, he said more relaxed. When will it be? Naruto asked. As he said that, Denny and Yinsen became serious. Tomorrow will be the last day, Denny said. We just need to make a little more progress to finish it. I still can't move freely, Uzumaki said. I don't have all my strength back, but I can buy you some time if you need it. I need muscles right now, she told him. I can do that, he smiled. Tomorrow would be the day they would make it out alive. Dot. 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 It was the numerous sounds produced by a blonde as he struck the metal forcefully. He had a determined look. Beside him was Daniela Stark, who held the metal with clamps, examining its precise shape. Leave it as it is, you might deform it with your forceful blows, Denny calmly intervened. Naruto was wearing a dark sleeveless shirt. Yinsen had given it to him since his previous clothing was in ruins. He wouldn't strike it so hard if you didn't move it every second, the blonde lazily replied. Whatever you say, the woman replied, distancing herself from the blonde, placing the metal piece on a table for Yinsen to inspect. I'm surprised it's done well. I thought Naruto would ruin it, the man confessed in amazement. Now everyone's against me, he muttered dryly. Yinsen apologized with a nervous smile but was genuinely impressed with the work they had done. A metallic mask lay before him. He would touch it to examine it more closely, but he could still feel the heat it emitted due to the high temperatures it had been exposed to. "All right, everyone, it's time," Danny said with seriousness. Nodding, each of them went about their designated tasks. Naruto handed the dark orange jacket to the woman. He wouldn't need it anymore. He still held a deep fondness for his perverted mentor, but even he knew he wouldn't be wearing it much. "You might feel like you're in an oven, so we need to get out as soon as possible," Uzumaki said seriously. "You don't have to remind me," the woman sighed. The jacket was warm. She might keep it as sleepwear, but there was a good chance it would be damaged. She stretched out both hands, and Naruto quickly handed her 2 gloves, placing one on each hand. "The collar," he reminded her. "Yinsen." The blonde called out. He couldn't do it with one hand. The man quickly approached to help. Naruto assisted Yinsen in putting on the rest of the armor. He headed to the door to wait for the guards. A portion of the door opened, revealing the face of one of the guards. "Hello," Uzumaki greeted cheerfully. Those behind him could hear him speak, which served as the warning they needed to hurry. "I want this thing called pizza. I heard there are different types of it. But I want a specific one. Is there ramen pizza?" he asked one of the guards who looked at him strangely. "Yinsen." One of the guards called to Yinsen, who turned his gaze to the man, but Naruto got in the middle. "Danny wants a ham burger? You know, the things with bread and meat in them," Uzumaki insisted. "I don't know what you just said, but it sounded like a threat," the guard frowned. The guards were becoming impatient. Naruto pointed to a small window, but he didn't expect the Uzumaki's only arm to reach through it to grab the cannon and pull it inside. Unable to release it in time, it crashed into the metal door, dropping the weapon. Naruto went over to Yinsen. "How much time is left?" he asked seriously. He could hear a large number of people approaching. "We're halfway there," Yinsen replied nervously. A bomb exploded as the door was opened. "Naruto, I need you to stay with her," Yinsen told him. "What will you do?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "I'll buy us some time." "Don't do it, stick to the plan," the woman spoke seriously. It wasn't the time to deviate from everything they had done so far. "We still have a long way to go. I'll try to hold them off as much as I can. If something happens to me, you'll be the next one to stop them," Yinsen said, ignoring Danny. "I can go, I have more experience and can hold them back for as long as necessary," Naruto argued seriously. He wouldn't let him die. He wouldn't fail another friend. "Naruto, you're a good kid, you must know what I'm planning," Yinsen smiled sadly. "Yinsen, you have a family. I can't let you go to your death," Naruto protested. "My family is gone. I have no one left out there. If I die, I'll know I died for a good reason. I'll be reunited with them someday." Naruto fell silent. Was death the only salvation? If he died, would he see all his loved ones again? "Naruto, I trust you," was the last thing he said, giving Danny a glance before nodding and heading out, taking a weapon. Naruto snapped out of his stupor upon hearing a hail of bullets. "Naruto. Where's Yinsen?" she asked, alarmed. They were barely reaching 60%. "I'll go get him," he said quickly but stopped in his tracks. "Don't go. We're almost done," she urged. Naruto headed for the entrance without spotting Yinsen. He heard the guard's footsteps approaching his position. It could only mean one thing. He returned to the workshop just in time as the power ran out, plunging the entire place into darkness. Using his memory and touch, he picked up a key from the ground. He heard that they were already in the room. Jumping onto the ceiling, he waited for them to enter but was surprised to see them firing all around the room. One man was directly beneath him. He dropped down with the key aimed at his head. When he hit the floor, the man also fell with a severe head injury. The other two aimed at him, but Danny appeared in her suit, striking one of them in the head and smashing the other against the rocky wall. "I'm surprised you can move with all that metal around you," the blonde said with genuine surprise. "It's not that heavy, but I want out of this place. I'm roasting in here," the woman replied, peering through the holes in her mask at the blonde, who held the key like a weapon. "Stay behind me, I'll handle these guys," she finished before stepping forward, where more people began shooting at them. One of the men, perhaps the bravest or the most foolish, charged at her with a war cry, but with a swing of her arm, she knocked him against the wall, leaving him on the floor. Naruto stayed a few meters behind her, eyeing the weapons. They would undoubtedly cause him great harm if one of those bullets hit him. He was also replenishing his depleted chakra. His coils were at less than 5% of their maximum, enough for a Jinan. But he knew he couldn't just stand there, he had to reach Yinsen. Passing by Danny, who had punched a man in the chest, He looked at her for a moment before taking off at full speed. He raised the key he had and dropped it forcefully, producing a gruesome sound as it connected with one of the men's skulls, leaving the key embedded in the man's head. He headed toward the end of the tunnels. He saw several men passing by, chasing after Danny, but he didn't pay them any mind. She had helped create part of the suit, and he was confident that Danny could handle them. But he stopped when he came face to face with the bald man who had brought him to this place. The man had a gun in his hands and was aiming it directly at him. Yinsen was just a few meters away from him. Thinking quickly, he spotted a box and sensed chakra in that direction. Forming half of the ram hand seal, he prepared for the explosion. Boom! Bang! He opened his eyes in surprise. Yinsen was hugging him, and he could feel something warm touching his exposed skin. Naruto, the man called, collapsing onto his arms. Naruto fell to his knees beside him. Yinsen! He exclaimed in shock, his stomach bleeding, and something thick in his hand. He knew his back was the same. Hold on, I'll heal you. He quickly said, looking at his hand, which had the eclipse, a combination of the sun and moon marks, before placing his palm on Yinsen's chest. He stopped when Yinsen took his hand in his. Naruto, he murmured softly. I still don't understand everything you told us, he smiled with grace, gazing at the ceiling with a distant look. But I can say with certainty that you can do amazing things, things a hero would do, he spoke calmly, completely forgetting his own pain. Don't speak. I can heal you, I can. I can bring your family, Yinsen, Uzumaki said, several memories flooding his mind, Kakashi, Guy, Jiraiya, Gaara. Various names passed through his mind like an endless list of people he couldn't protect. Naruto, Yinsen called again, capturing Uzumaki's attention as he tightly held Yinsen's hand. From the moment I saw you, I could tell we had the same eyes, he murmured with a bitter smile. The eyes of someone who lost everything but carried on, bearing the pain alone. He spoke with an eerie calmness, as if he wasn't suffering from the 2 holes in his abdomen and back. Not even the clanking steps of Danny's suit made as much noise as Yinsen's words. You don't have to bear it all alone. You might be strong, but a strong person isn't necessarily more powerful. A strong person is the one who. His words were muffled by the flames from the cave. With one final smile, Yinsen released Uzumaki's hand, leaving the blonde staring wide-eyed. Danny looked at the 2 men, feeling a deep anger and sadness as she saw Yinsen let go of the blonde's hand, taking his last breath. Putting her mask back on, she left the cave, leaving Uzumaki behind with the body of a friend. Naruto heard all the gunshots outside, and the place grew even hotter. He had to leave Yinsen's body and run outside, watching as Danny was already executing the second part of the plan. This burns. He shouted in pain, clinging to the back of the metal suit and gaining altitude. I know. Danny yelled back, her face now pale as they ascended. For some reason, the sky seemed to swirl and now resembled sand. We're falling. The blonde yelled again, now terrified as the suit disintegrated faster the farther they fell. Oh, for a. Her curse was silenced when her body made contact with the sand. Looking up at the sky, Naruto let out a long sigh, covered in sand, feeling sweat dripping down his body. This sucks, he muttered in pain. This is strange, Uzumaki said with a nervous smile. He was wearing a buttoned white shirt along with dark pants and matching shoes. His left sleeve hung empty, revealing his lack of an arm. You'll get used to it, but I can't say the same for this, Danny replied bitterly, wearing a black vest over a blue shirt. She had on a skirt with white stockings and a pair of black heels. Well, back home, we didn't wear shoes because they hindered our movement or would easily get damaged, he spoke, recalling his home. They had recently arrived in America, saved by Danny's best friend, who had been kind to him when they learned he had been held captive alongside the woman. They felt a slight wobble, and Danny smiled. They were back home. Kid, I'll show you what real food of the gods is, she said confidently. Of course, I already know it's ramen, he smiled cunningly. Ramen was ramen, and therefore the food of the gods, basic math. When I get up from this thing, I'll. He muttered with a small smile as the hatch opened, letting the sunlight hit his face. Do you need help? The driver asked with a smile, extending his arm for support. How kind of you, he said sarcastically, but his smile remained. He got up with effort, putting most of his weight on Naruto, but he found it easier to walk. They both exited the plane calmly. Naruto was in better shape than her due to his resilient body, but she distanced herself from him. She didn't care, as far as she knew, the woman was proud. Danny approached a woman with orange hair. They exchanged a few words before turning their gaze to the blonde. What are you standing there for? Let's go, she asked with exasperation. Naruto nervously smiled, he felt like he was in for several headaches. He's a friend, she replied to Pot's unspoken question. With a nod, they all got into the car, Naruto in the front passenger seat. Where to, miss? The driver asked calmly. Straight to the hospital, Happy, please, Pot said but was immediately interrupted. No? She asked, surprised. We need to go to the hospital, you're not okay, she tried to argue, but Danny made her point clear. I'm hungry, and the kid in front doesn't know what good food is, she said seriously. Naruto raised an eyebrow but dismissed it. Also, a press conference, she finished as she settled into her seat. Burger first. Ramen is better, Naruto declared seriously, holding a small burger in his hand and challenging the woman behind him. Haven't you learned anything? She asked sternly. This, she pointed to the burger in her hand, is the best thing you've ever tasted in your life. Understand? She asked with a silent threat. I don't understand, this isn't even comparable to ramen. Ramen is 3 million times better than this, he said irritably. The food of the gods couldn't lose to anyone. Happy, throw him out of the car, she ordered heatedly. At your command, Happy said calmly, about to throw the blonde out, but Pepper stopped him. Don't do it. She urgently ordered. Look who we have here, the woman murmured with a serene smile. She opened the door and was greeted with a hug from a tall man with a shaved head and a gray beard. Happy quickly exited the car and offered another burger, which she gladly accepted. Meanwhile, Naruto followed the woman named Pepper, not having much else to do. He would follow her as far as she'd go, he had a rough idea of how this world functioned. What caught his attention were the so-called X-Men, people with mutations that made them different. Unfortunately, the rest of the world, or at least a significant portion of it, didn't see them that way. They faced discrimination and were often hunted down simply for being born with a mutation that made them different. He was bombarded by numerous flashes, but he resisted as much as he could. When they entered the place, Pepper kept a considerable distance. Naruto stood to her right, watching Danny, who was preparing to give a talk. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a man in a suit. He exchanged a few words with Pepper, handed her something, and with a smile, bid farewell, not before glancing at Naruto, who raised a confused eyebrow. Is he a friend of yours? He asked, puzzled. No, she replied simply, and they didn't say anything more as they listened to Danny, who said something that left everyone in the room stunned. Naruto smiled, it was a good choice. But looking at the masses, he could see that this would leave a significant impact. Nice place, Naruto said sincerely. It was a house, if you could call it that, perched on the edge of a cliff. I have more of these around the world, but this is the one I frequent the most, she replied simply, not finding a house particularly interesting. Oh, he couldn't come up with anything better to say. Your hands, show them to me, she said suddenly when they entered the house, as if she had remembered something. My what? He asked, bewildered. Your hands, come here, she held his hands over hers and muttered a few things. There, you can inspect the house in the meantime. I'll call you in a couple of hours, she told him calmly. Naruto felt confused but eventually nodded and explored the mansion. Naruto made his way to the kitchen. Everything was futuristic, according to Naruto. He examined a machine closely, reached out, and pressed the screen. It immediately started making coffee. Naruto jumped when the coffee began to overflow onto the shelf. Anxious, he pressed more buttons, causing foam to spew from the coffee maker. Destroy it, a deep voice in his head spoke. Kurama? He asked, surprised. Who else would it be? Jiminy Cricket? He asked sarcastically. I guess we need to watch Pinocchio, the blonde muttered, but foam splattered on his face. First, let's fix this, he sighed and began reading the small letters. He read the word stop, and the entire mess came to a halt. He breathed another sigh of relief. But his excitement turned into alarm when a screen lit up, and Stark's face appeared on it. Naruto, the woman spoke as she looked through the camera at the blonde, who stood next to a massive mess. I'll ask later, right now, I need your help, she said expressionlessly. Naruto felt nervous, he had some dirt on his face, probably from working on something in the past hour. Jarvis will guide you to where you need to go, she observed as Naruto looked puzzled. It's my AI, she added simply, and the screen turned off after finishing. Naruto remembered that AI meant artificial intelligence and looked back at the screen, waiting for something to happen. Good afternoon, Mr. Uzu, a male voice spoke from somewhere in the mansion. Uzu. I guess she didn't remember, he mumbled. Can I offer you something, sir? A cappuccino? He asked as the coffee maker produced a glass filled with coffee topped with foam. Naruto stared at the drink intently. Denny! Naruto exclaimed loudly, looking through the glass and seeing her lying on a gurney, partially undressed, with a machine measuring her vital signs. The door opened, and Naruto stepped in, taking in Stark's workshop. Eyes here, I need you to do something for me, Danny said, snapping Naruto out of his stupor. Sure, Naruto approached the gurney, noticing that Danny had something in her hands. Is that a reactor? Yes, this one is much better than the junk I have here. She paused for a moment before continuing. But I can't do it alone. I'll help you hold it. But you'll do the rest. Naruto nodded, agreeing. And if I see your eyes lingering on my boobs, I'll invite you to Chernobyl, she half threatened. Naruto smiled like a fox. I didn't hear you complain earlier, he shrugged. Besides, I can do amazing things with this hand, he said playfully. Stark sighed but smiled at the kid's joke. Naruto, on the other hand, looked at his palm. A mark of an eclipse appeared on it and disappeared in the next moment. That would consume too much chakra, Kurama spoke in his mind. He was sure Naruto would make his arm return, but it would take an inhuman amount of chakra, and they were still somewhat weakened from their last battle. I know, Kurama, but once I master that jutsu, I'll do amazing things, he said seriously. This would be his most powerful jutsu yet. There's just one loose wire deep inside, and it touches one of the walls causing a short circuit, Stark explained, fatigued. He handed his old reactor to Naruto. What do you want me to do with this? Naruto asked, looking at the reactor. Get rid of it, Stark said. Naruto looked at it for a moment before it disappeared. Now just pull out the cable, it's copper, Stark instructed, exhausted. Naruto nodded and inserted his hand, not affected by the smell or the plasma in his body. He felt something in his hand and started extracting it easily. Now, you need to remove it delicately, or... Stark cut off when Naruto yanked it out in one pull, a will coming out with it. The machine started making a sound, noticing that his pulse was too high. Hold it, Naruto said calmly. He knew it was suffering a cardiac arrest but more or less understood what he had to do. He connected the new reactor, and Stark let out a long breath when his heartbeat stabilized. Naruto looked at his hand bathed in plasma and discreetly wiped it on the table. I hope this is the last time I do this. We're on the same page, kid. Naruto rolled his eyes. That reminds me of something. Naruto began to fear for his life. You're going to college. To be continued.